Marcus Hayes had 30 days to prove stable housing, or his daughter Lily would go to her maternal grandparents permanently. The thoughts cycled through his mind as he sat in the high-backed leather chair, fingers white-knuckled around the armrest, while his brother's attorney droned through their mother's last will and testament. 300 miles of bad road had brought him to this moment, driving through 2 states with $47 in his wallet and a 9-year-old daughter who still believed her father could fix anything. Rex pressed against Marcus's leg, the Belgian Malinois' warm weight a familiar anchor against the rising tide in his chest. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that particular frequency that sent his mind spinning back to forward operating base Kalsu, where similar lights had flickered before the mortar attack that killed Jenkins and Ramirez and left Marcus with scars no doctor could see. His breath shortened. Rex shifted, applying more pressure, reading the spike in heart rate, the tension in muscles preparing to fight or flee. Lily's small hand found his, fingers threading through his larger ones with the easy trust of a child who'd never been given reason to doubt. She sat perfectly still in her Sunday dress, the blue one with white flowers that had been her mother's favorite, watching the lawyer's mouth move without understanding that every word sealed their fate a little tighter. 9 years old, and she'd already buried her mother, watched her father struggle through panic attacks in grocery stores, learned to count backwards from 10 when daddy's breathing got scary. She deserved better than a father whose hands shook when thunder rolled across the skittim. The lawyer cleared his throat with the self-importance of a man who controlled other people's futures with paperwork and couldn't understand why anyone would find that terrifying. His voice carried that particular pitch of false sympathy perfected by those who'd never actually suffered. And to my eldest son, Derek Hayes, I leave the family home, the investment portfolio valued at $12 million, and all remaining financial assets including the Connecticut property and the trust established in 1998. Derek leaned back in his chair with the satisfied ease of a man who'd always known he'd win, his charcoal suit probably worth more than Marcus had earned in the last 6 months. The smile didn't quite reach his eyes. It never did, but the triumph blazed clear enough. Victoria sat beside him in designer heels that cost more than Marcus's truck payment, her expression carefully neutral except for the slight curl at the corner of her mouth. They'd already won before the reading started. They always won. The lawyer flipped a page with theatrical precision, letting the silence stretch until even Lily shifted uncomfortably. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to something almost apologetic. And to my youngest son, Marcus Hayes, I leave nothing. He has cost this family enough. The words hit like incoming fire, that same sense of the world tilting sideways before the explosion. Lily's hand tightened in his, a small gasp escaping before she could stop it. Marcus felt her eyes on him, waiting for him to react, to defend himself, to prove that the words weren't true. He couldn't look at her. If he looked at her, he'd see the question forming. Why doesn't Grandma love you, Daddy? And he had no answer that wouldn't break something fundamental in her understanding of family. Rex growled low in his chest, a sound Marcus had only heard twice before. Once in Kandahar when a suicide bomber approached their checkpoint, and once in the parking lot outside his apartment when a man with a knife decided Marcus looked like an easy target. The dog knew. He always knew when threats emerged, whether they carried explosives or just words sharp enough to cut. Victoria's voice carried across the room with the kind of false concern that masked cruelty as care. Maybe it's for the best. Marcus has enough challenges without managing an inheritance. We wouldn't want him to feel overwhelmed. Derek chuckled, the sound oil-slick smooth. His eyes found Marcus's across the mahogany table. Let's be honest, little brother. You can barely hold a job. The military didn't exactly set you up for success, unless you count being jumpy and unstable as marketable skills. He tapped the leather folder in front of him. Mom was just being realistic. You've always been a burden. This time she finally acknowledged it. The room telescoped down to a single point of focus. Marcus felt his pulse hammering in his throat, felt the familiar electric panic crawling up his spine like insects under skin. The fluorescent lights grew brighter, the air thinner. Somewhere in the distance, mortars were falling, and Jenkins was screaming, and Ramirez's blood was warm and sticky on Marcus's hands as he tried to hold the pieces together. Lily stood abruptly, her chair scraping against marble. Her voice came out small but fierce. Trembling with an anger Marcus had never heard from her. My daddy isn't a burden. He's a hero. He saved people. Derek's expression shifted to something almost pitying. He addressed Lily as if she were a particularly slow student. Sweetheart, your father did serve his country, and that's admirable. But heroism doesn't pay bills or provide stability. Your grandparents, Lewis, understand that. They filed the custody motion because they care about your welfare. The floor dropped out from under Marcus's world. He'd known the custody hearing was coming, May. The papers had been served 3 weeks ago, but hearing Derek weaponize it here in front of Lily, with their mother's corpse barely cold in the ground, revealed a capacity for cruelty Marcus hadn't fully recognized. His brother wasn't just taking the inheritance. He was ensuring Marcus lost everything. The lawyer shuffled papers, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his office. Mr. Hayes, Marcus, there are formalities to complete. The estate settlement requires, Marcus stood, pulling Lily close. We're done here. The pressure in his chest had built to critical mass. If he stayed another minute, he'd either collapse into a full panic attack in front of his daughter or say something that would end up in the custody hearing transcripts. Neither option was acceptable. Lily needed to see him strong, needed to believe her father could weather this storm, even if Marcus wasn't sure he believed it himself. He tugged gently on Rex's collar. The dog fell into step instantly, positioning himself between Marcus and Derek with the tactical awareness born from 3 tours in combat zones. Rex's eyes never left Derek's face, that unwavering stare that had made more than one aggressive suspect reconsider their life choices. The message was clear. You're a threat. I'm watching. Derek's voice followed them to the door, casual cruelty wrapped in false concern. The custody hearing is in 3 weeks, Marcus. You might want to find a lawyer, though I suppose you'd need money for that. If you need help, financial help, we can discuss terms, family rates. Marcus's hand froze on the doorknob. The shame burned so hot, it felt like shrapnel wounds reopening, like every scar tissue and nerve ending simultaneously catching fire. He'd borrowed money from Derek twice before, once to cover Rachel's final hospital bills when the insurance maxed out, once to keep the lights on after Marcus lost his warehouse job following a panic attack during inventory. Both times, Derek had made sure the debt felt heavier than currency. Lily tugged his hand, pulling him forward. Her voice was barely a whisper. Let's go, Daddy. Please. The hallway outside felt colder, the marble floors stretching endlessly toward the elevator. Marcus knelt briefly, resting his forehead against Rex's, letting the beach's steady breathing regulate his own. The technique had been drilled into him by the VA therapist who'd matched them. When the world fragments, find your anchor. Rex was living proof that sometimes anchors had 4 legs and understood trauma better than most humans. Lily wrapped her arms around both of them, a 3-way embrace in an empty hallway while expensive shoes clicked past on their way to important meetings about important things. She whispered against Marcus's shoulder, I don't care what Uncle Derek says. You're the best daddy ever. The words should have comforted. Instead, they magnified the weight pressing down on Marcus's chest. Best daddy ever. And he couldn't even keep a roof over her head. Best daddy ever, and strangers were deciding whether he was fit to parent his own child. Best daddy ever, and he'd just been publicly disowned by his own mother's will. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, rapid and purposeful. A woman's voice called out, slightly breathless, Mr. Hayes, Marcus, please wait. Marcus turned, automatically shifting to put himself between Lily and the approaching stranger. Years of convoy duty had trained certain responses that never quite faded. Always know your exits, always protect your 6, always assume unknown contacts might be hostile until proven otherwise. Rex stood alertly, reading Marcus's tension, but holding position. The woman who hurried toward them looked nothing like the polished corporate attorneys inside. Mid-50s, dark hair pulled back practically rather than fashionably, glasses slightly fogged from rushing. She carried a worn leather messenger bag instead of a briefcase, and her sensible flats suggested someone who valued function over image. Most importantly, her eyes held genuine concern instead of the calculated sympathy Marcus had learned to recognize and distrust. She slowed as she approached, raising both hands in a calming gesture. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm an attorney, but not for them. Her voice carried conviction and something that sounded like anger on Marcus's behalf. I need to give you something before you disappear into the city. Marcus's guard stayed up, muscle memory from too many ambushes disguised as friendly encounters. His hand tightened protectively on Lily's shoulder. If this is about the custody case, Sarah shook her head firmly. This is about your Aunt Eleanor, Eleanor Blackwood. The name hit Marcus sideways, dredging up half-formed childhood memories. An old woman at the edge of family gatherings, always watching him with sad eyes. Someone his mother refused to speak to, whose name made his father's jaw tighten. A ghost from a family history Marcus had never been allowed to understand. Sarah reached into her messenger bag and withdrew an envelope, cream-colored and thick with age at the edges. Marcus's name was written across the front in looping handwriting that seemed to carry its own weight, its own history. Marcus Thomas Hayes. The middle name gave him pause. Thomas had been his grandfather's name, the one decent man in a family tree full of thorns. Sarah's voice softened. Eleanor passed away 6 weeks ago. She left explicit instructions. Deliver this to you immediately after your mother's will was read. Not before. She knew what would happen in there. Sarah glanced back toward the conference room, her expression suggesting she'd witnessed more than one family destroy itself over money. She wanted you to have options they couldn't take away. Lily spoke up, her child's directness cutting through adult complexity. Did Aunt Eleanor like my daddy? Sarah knelt slightly, meeting Lily at eye level. Honey, your Aunt Eleanor loved your daddy more than anyone in that room ever did. She just couldn't tell him until now. Marcus took the envelope with hands that trembled slightly. The paper felt substantial, important, like it carried more than just words. Rex sniffed at it curiously, then sat with a small huff of approval. Whatever was inside, the dog didn't sense danger. The seal broke easily under Marcus's thumb. Inside, a single sheet of paper, handwritten with the careful precision of someone who understood their words, would outlive them. My dear Marcus, you do not know me, but I have known you all your life. I remember the boy who stood alone at family gatherings while others laughed and pretended not to see him. I remember your father's funeral, how you wore your dress uniform and held your spine straight while your mother refused to acknowledge your presence. I know what they did to you. I lived it long before you were born. That's why I made a choice. The only one I could trust to carry what I built was you. Blackwood Estate in Pine Haven, Montana, now belongs to you. The deed is enclosed. Go there. Take Lily. Everything will make sense in time. Your strength has been tested 1,000 times by war and family both. But the true test begins now. With love, Aunt Eleanor. Marcus read the letter 3 times while Lily pressed against his side, trying to peek at the words. A house? A property he'd never seen. In a state he'd never visited. From a woman he barely remembered. It felt like a trap, or a dream, or another cruel joke from a family that specialized in building hope just to watch it collapse. Sarah must have read the doubt in his expression. Eleanor Blackwood spent 40 years building something remarkable. She was brilliant, complicated, and absolutely certain about 2 things: that your family would destroy you if given the chance, and that you deserve better. Blackwood Estate is real, substantial, and legally yours. I have the deed here. She pulled a document from her bag, official seals and county stamps making it unmistakably authentic. 840 acres in the Montana Rockies. The house was built in 1892. It needs work, but it's solid. Lily tugged Marcus's sleeve, her voice pitching higher with excitement. Daddy, we could have a real house? Like, our own house? The custody papers flashed through Marcus's mind. Paragraph 3, subsection B. Petitioner asserts that respondent Marcus Hayes lacks stable housing appropriate for raising a minor child. Current residence is a 1-bedroom apartment with documented code violations. The Lewis family's attorney had been thorough, documenting every crack in the plaster, every time the heat had failed during winter, every reason why their granddaughter deserved better than what Marcus could provide. But a house in Montana, that changed the equation. Stable housing, property ownership, the kind of foundation that family court judges valued. Sarah seemed to read his thoughts. Eleanor anticipated the custody challenge. She left a letter for the judge too, if it comes to that. But Marcus, you need to understand something. Her expression grew serious. Your brother has been searching for Eleanor's property for 20 years. He knows she accumulated significant wealth, and he's convinced it's hidden somewhere. If you go to Montana, he will follow. Eleanor wanted you to have time to get established before he finds you. Marcus's tactical mind, the part that had kept him alive through 3 deployments, immediately started calculating. How long before he figures out where we went? The estate transfer won't be public record for another week, maybe 2 if the county office is backed up. Sarah pulled out a business card and pressed it into Marcus's hand. Call me when you arrive. There are things you'll need help understanding, things Eleanor left for you to discover. Lily's small voice cut through the adult conversation. Can Rex come too? Sarah smiled, the first genuine warmth Marcus had seen from anyone except his daughter in months. Honey, Rex is part of why Eleanor chose your dad. She understood that warriors need their battle brothers, even the ones with 4 legs. The elevator dinged behind them. Derek's voice carried through the closing doors, already on his phone, probably instructing his attorney to accelerate the custody proceedings now that Marcus had walked out. The clock was ticking. 3 weeks until the hearing. No home, no income, and a daughter who trusted him completely despite overwhelming evidence that maybe, possibly, she shouldn't. Marcus looked down at Lily. She gazed back up at him with Rachel's eyes, dark brown, impossibly trusting, seeing the best in him even when he couldn't see it himself. His wife had made him promise, during those final days in the hospice, keep Lily close, keep her safe. Don't let my parents turn her into what they tried to make me. Fight for her, even when you don't think you can fight for yourself. He'd made that promise holding Rachel's hand while cancer ate her from the inside, while Lily slept fitfully in the chair beside the bed, exhausted from 2 days of watching her mother fade. Marcus had kept every promise he'd made to Rachel except one. He hadn't been able to give Lily the stable, secure life she deserved. Maybe Montana was his chance to finally deliver. Marcus folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket along with the deed. When you say the house needs work, what exactly are we talking about? Sarah's expression suggested she was choosing her words carefully. It's been vacant for 6 months since Eleanor's passing. Before that, she lived there alone for 40 years. The bones are solid, but it's going to need attention. Heating, plumbing, electrical, all functional but dated. And there's a blizzard warning for Pine Haven County. If you're going, you need to leave today. The mountain roads close fast once winter hits. Marcus pulled out his phone, checked the weather radar. A massive system was moving across the northern Rockies, promising to dump 3 feet of snow across Montana within 72 hours. After that, the forecast showed nothing but white for days. If they went now, they'd be racing the storm. If they didn't go, they'd be stuck in New York with no home in a custody hearing that grew more inevitable with each passing day. Lily seemed to sense the decision forming. She wrapped her arms around Marcus's waist, pressing her face against his side. I want to go, Daddy. I want to see our house. Our house. Not just a house, not Aunt Eleanor's house, but ours. The possessive pronoun carried more weight than all the legal documents in Sarah's messenger bag. Lily had already claimed it, already imagined a future where they belonged somewhere, together. Rex nudged Marcus's hand with his cold nose, that particular push that meant decision time. Move or stay, but choose. The dog had pulled Marcus out of more than one paralysis spiral, those moments when too many variables created gridlock in a brain already fragmented by trauma. Sometimes the best decision was just any decision, action over analysis, movement over stagnation. Marcus extended his hand to Sarah. Thank you for finding us, for this. She shook his hand firmly. Thank you for going. Eleanor spent her last 6 months planning this transfer, making sure everything was legally airtight. She wanted you to have what was always meant to be yours. Don't let Derek take that away. Sarah handed him another card, this one with a phone number written on the back. That's my cell. Use it anytime, day or night. And Marcus? She waited until he met her eyes. Eleanor believed in you. Maybe it's time you believed in yourself. The words settled uncomfortably against everything Marcus had internalized about his own worth. Men who had full panic attacks in Walmart checkout lines didn't deserve belief. Fathers who could barely keep electricity running didn't deserve trust. Veterans who woke screaming from nightmares about friends bleeding out in Afghan dust didn't deserve second chances. But Lily deserved better than watching her father surrender. They walked to the parking garage in silence, Marcus carrying Lily's overnight bag, while Rex maintained his protective position. The old Ford truck looked even more decrepit next to the luxury vehicles filling the Manhattan garage. Rust showing through blue paint, passenger door held closed with wire, engine that coughed like a two-pack-a-day smoker. But it ran mostly, and Marcus knew how to fix what broke. Skills learned in motor pools across 3 continents had unexpected civilian applications. Lily climbed into the back seat without being asked, buckling herself in while Rex hopped up beside her. The dog would ride back there for the entire journey, Marcus knew, providing warmth and security for a girl who'd already lost too much. Good dogs understood grief better than therapists ever could. Marcus sat behind the wheel for a long moment, key in the ignition, but not yet turning. Montana was 2,000 miles west, 2 days of driving through weather that would only get worse. They had $47, half a tank of gas, and a destination that might be salvation or just another form of disaster. But staying meant watching Lily's grandparents take her away in 3 weeks. Staying meant Derek's smug satisfaction, another victory for cruelty over courage. Staying meant surrendering the first real chance Marcus had been offered since Rachel died. He turned the key. The engine caught, stuttered, caught again. Good enough. Lily leaned forward between the seats, her small voice carrying a determination that should have belonged to someone older. Daddy, we're treasure hunters now. Aunt Eleanor left us a mystery to solve. Marcus checked the rearview mirror, meeting his daughter's eyes. Yeah, baby, I guess we are. The truck pulled out of the parking garage into late afternoon traffic, heading west toward highways that would carry them away from everything familiar. Rex pressed his warm bulk against Lily's side, the dog's steady breathing creating a rhythm that regulated both human heartbeats. They were leaving behind family who'd never wanted them, heading toward a house from a woman they'd never known, chasing the possibility that maybe, possibly, somewhere in Montana, there existed a place they could finally belong. Snow started falling as they crossed into New Jersey, light flakes that promised heavier weather ahead. Marcus gripped the steering wheel and drove toward the unknown, toward the mountains, toward whatever waited at Blackwood Estate. Behind them, Derek was already making calls, already planning how to take away the one thing Marcus had left. But Derek hadn't counted on one variable. Marcus Hayes had survived worse than family betrayal. He'd survived watching friends die. He'd survived coming home to a country that thanked him for his service, but wouldn't hire him for steady work. He'd survived watching cancer steal the only woman who had ever loved him unconditionally. He'd survived this too. For Lily, for Rex, for the ghost of a woman named Eleanor who'd seen something in him worth protecting. The highway stretched ahead, disappearing into gathering dusk. 2 days to Montana. 2 days to outrun the storm, both the meteorological one and the one Derek would bring when he discovered where they'd gone. Marcus pressed the accelerator and drove toward the only chance he had left. The first day passed in a blur of interstate monotony, punctuated by truck stop coffee and cheap gas station sandwiches. Lily did homework in the backseat, her math workbook propped against Rex's flank while the dog dozed and the miles rolled past. Marcus drove in long stretches, pushing through until exhaustion forced stops, hyper-aware of every dollar spent on food and fuel. $47 became $32, then $18. Then Marcus was using the emergency credit card he had promised himself to save for actual emergencies. A house in Montana qualified as emergency enough. They spent the first night in a budget motel outside Cleveland, the kind of place that charged by the hour and didn't ask questions about the large dog. Marcus lay awake while Lily slept between him and Rex, listening to his daughter's soft breathing and the rumble of trucks on the nearby highway. His phone buzzed twice with messages from numbers he didn't recognize, probably the Lewis family's attorney trying to serve additional papers. He silenced it. The second day brought them into the Great Plains, landscape flattening into horizons so vast they made Marcus's chest tight with a different kind of anxiety. Too much open space, too many sight lines. No cover, no concealment, No way to control the environment. Combat instincts never quite shut off, especially when carrying precious cargo. Lily noticed his tension during a gas station stop somewhere in South Dakota. She climbed out of the truck and took his hand with the solemnity of a much older child. "Daddy, do the 5 things exercise." Marcus blinked, pulled back from scanning for threats that existed only in his rewired nervous system. The 5 things exercise, his therapist's gift for managing acute anxiety. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Grounding techniques for men whose minds sometimes forgot which country they were in. He knelt to Lily's level, let her steady voice guide him back. 5 things, Daddy. Tell me. I see you. I see Rex. I see the truck. I see mountains ahead. Marcus took a shaky breath. I see your smile. 4 things you can touch. Marcus reached out, touching her shoulder, the cold metal of the truck, the warm fur of Rex's head as the dog moved close, the rough fabric of his own jacket. You, truck, Rex, my coat. 3 things you hear. Your voice, the wind, that semi-shifting gears. 2 things you smell. Gas fumes, your strawberry shampoo. 1 thing you taste. The coffee I had an hour ago, it was terrible. Lily giggled, the sound bright against the flat prairie wind. Motel coffee is always terrible. Mama used to say that. The mention of Rachel settled warm and painful in Marcus's chest. She taught Lily the grounding technique during Marcus's worst months after coming home. When panic attacks came 3 times a day, and Marcus couldn't explain to a 7-year-old why Daddy sometimes forgot where he was. Rachel had been patient, practical, perfect in ways Marcus had never deserved. And now she was gone, and their daughter was teaching him the techniques her mother had passed down. And the world kept spinning no matter how much it hurt. They bought gas, bought more terrible coffee, bought a bag of apples because Lily insisted they needed something healthy. Then back on the highway, pushing west, racing the weather that darkened the sky ahead like a promise of consequences. Montana appeared gradually, the landscape rising and folding into foothills that grew into proper mountains. Snow began falling as they crossed the state line, light at first, then heavier, fat flakes that stuck to the windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. The radio crackled with weather advisories. Blizzard warning in effect for all Rocky Mountain counties, travel highly discouraged, whiteout conditions expected after nightfall. Lily pressed her face to the window, watching the world turn white. It's like we're driving into a snow globe, Daddy. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. Visibility was dropping fast, the road ahead disappearing into curtains of white that made depth perception a cruel guessing game. GPS flickered, struggling with satellite reception through the storm. But the directions were simple enough. Highway 12 until Pine Haven County, then north on Forest Service Road 47 for 15 miles until the turnoff marked only by a stone gate. The stone gate materialized out of the blizzard like something from a ghost story. Granite pillars flanking a narrow drive carved with a single word, Blackwood. The letters were weathered but still legible, suggesting someone had maintained the entrance even while the house beyond remained empty. Marcus turned onto the drive carefully, feeling the truck's tires slip on fresh snow before finding purchase. The road, barely wider than a single lane, climbed steeply through dense pine forest, branches heavy with snow, reaching overhead like a tunnel. No tire tracks preceded them. No one had been here recently, or if they had, the storm had erased all evidence. Lily's voice carried a tremor that might have been excitement or fear. How far to the house? Map says 3 miles from the gate. Marcus kept his voice steady, not mentioning that 3 miles in these conditions could take an hour, or that if they got stuck out here, help wouldn't come until the storm passed. Days, possibly. Rex stood in the back seat, bracing himself against the turns, ears alert. The dog's behavior had shifted from relaxed travel mode to something more vigilant. That watchfulness that preceded finding danger or reaching a destination. Marcus had learned to trust the animal's instincts more than his own damaged ones. The house emerged from the storm without warning, massive and looming, a Victorian Gothic structure that shouldn't exist this far from civilization. 3 stories of dark wood and stone, Towers with peaked roofs, gables and dormers, and enough windows to light a small town. Every surface was covered in snow, icicles hanging from the wraparound porch like frozen sentinels. No light showed in any window. No smoke rose from the three chimneys. The place looked abandoned, haunted, impossible. "Daddy, it's huge." Lily's voice was barely a whisper, overtaking fear. Aunt Eleanor lived here all by herself? Marcus pulled the truck as close to the front steps as the drifts allowed and killed the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. No traffic noise, no city sounds, just wind howling through pines and the creak of old wood under the weight of snow. The isolation was complete. They were alone out here, miles from help, surrounded by wilderness and weather, and a house that looked like it held more secrets than rooms. Rex jumped out first, landing in snow up to his chest, immediately beginning a perimeter check that was pure military training. The dog circled the truck, then moved toward the house, testing each step, reading the environment in ways humans couldn't match. When he reached the porch stairs and barked once, clear, sharp, all good signal, Marcus allowed himself to breathe. Lily scrambled out, her winter coat already dusted white with snow. She stared up at the house with the kind of wonder only children could manage when faced with the impossible. "We're going to live in a castle." "It's just a house, baby." But even as Marcus said it, he knew the words were inadequate. This wasn't just a house any more than combat was just loud. This was legacy, history, weight. This was Eleanor's entire adult life crystallized into architecture. This was home or prison, sanctuary or trap, and he wouldn't know which until they stepped inside. The front door was solid oak, 10 feet tall, carved with patterns that might have been vines or might have been something else entirely. Marcus pulled the key from his pocket, old brass worn smooth by decades of use, and fitted it into the lock. The mechanism turned smoothly, too smoothly for something that should have seized from months of winter weather. Someone had maintained this. Someone had been here. The door swung open on hinges that didn't squeak, revealing darkness beyond. Marcus pulled out his phone, activated the flashlight, and stepped across the threshold with Rex close at his side and Lily gripping the back of his jacket. The beam cut through dust and shadows, illuminating a grand foyer that belonged in a museum. Marble floors veined with darker stone, a sweeping double staircase rising to the second floor, walls paneled in wood so dark it was almost black. Furniture shapes lurked under white dust sheets like ghosts waiting for resurrection. The air smelled of cold and age and something floral. Perfume or flowers or the lingering scent of a woman who'd died 6 weeks ago. Lily's voice echoed off the high ceiling. "It's not scary. It's beautiful." Marcus wasn't sure he agreed, but his daughter's certainty pushed back against the unease coiling in his gut. Rex trotted forward, sniffing methodically, checking corners and doorways with professional thoroughness. The dog's tail was up, alert but not alarmed, cautious but not afraid. They moved deeper into the house, Marcus's flashlight beam revealing room after room of preserved history. A parlor with furniture from another century, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, every spine thick with dust, a kitchen that managed to feel both ancient and meticulously maintained, with an old-fashioned stove and modern appliances existing in uneasy cohabitation. Lily pulled open a cabinet, revealing rows of canned goods arranged with military precision. "Daddy, there's food, lots of food, like she knew we were coming." Marcus checked the dates on the cans, all recent, none more than a year old. Eleanor had stocked the house, prepared it, left everything they'd need to survive. The gesture hit harder than any inheritance check could have. This was care, tangible and practical, from a woman who'd known she wouldn't live to see them arrive. They found candles in a drawer, matches beside them, and Marcus lit 3, placing them carefully around the kitchen. Warm light pushed back the shadows, making the space feel less like a tomb and more like a home waiting to wake. Rex settled on the floor with a satisfied grunt, claiming territory. Lily explored cabinets, finding plates and cups in a children's section with unbreakable plastic that made her laugh. Aunt Eleanor definitely knew about me. "Look, there's even a pink cup with horses." Marcus examined the cup, noting the price tag still attached. purchased recently, deliberately, for a child Eleanor had never met but somehow knew would need a pink cup with horses. The attention to detail was overwhelming. Not just providing shelter, but anticipating needs, imagining futures, building toward a possibility Eleanor herself wouldn't witness. They ate a quiet dinner of soup, heated on the stove after Marcus figured out the propane system. Lily talked between spoonfuls, her exhaustion from 2 days of travel bleeding through excitement. Can I pick my room? Can Rex sleep with me? Can we explore more tomorrow? Yes, yes, and we'll see. First, let's find somewhere warm to sleep. The second floor revealed 6 bedrooms, each furnished but covered in the same dust sheets as downstairs. Marcus chose 2 rooms side by side, one slightly smaller that had clearly been prepared for a child. Books on the shelves, toys in a chest, paintings of animals on the walls. Lily claimed it immediately, pulling dust covers off furniture to reveal a 4-poster bed that looked straight out of a fairy tale. This is the best room ever. Did Aunt Eleanor have kids? I don't think so. Marcus pulled blankets from a cedar chest, shaking out moths and years. But she wanted someone to use this room. Someone small. Me. Lily climbed onto the bed, bouncing once. She wanted me to use it. She knew I'd come here with you, even though she never met us. That's like magic, Daddy. Not magic, planning, obsessive, detailed planning by a woman who'd watched from the shadows and prepared for every contingency. Marcus tucked Lily in, piling blankets until only her face showed, her dark hair spreading across the pillow. Rex jumped up without permission, curling at the foot of the bed like a living furnace. I'm not scared here. Lily's voice was already fading toward sleep. It feels safe, like Aunt Eleanor's still taking care of us. Marcus kissed her forehead. Get some sleep, treasure hunter. Tomorrow we explore. He left the door cracked and crossed to his own room, smaller but adequate, with a narrow bed and a window overlooking the front drive. Snow was still falling, accumulation building on the porch railing. They were well and truly snowed in now. No leaving until the storm passed and the roads cleared. Trapped here for better or worse. Marcus lay down fully clothed, too wired to sleep despite bone-deep exhaustion. The house settled around him, wood creaking, wind howling, normal sounds that his combat-trained brain insisted on cataloging as potential threats. But beneath the ordinary noises, something else. Footsteps, maybe, soft and careful, moving somewhere on the floor below. He sat up, heart hammering. Probably just the house settling. Probably thermal contraction from the temperature drop. Probably anything except what his paranoid military mind immediately assumed. Someone else was here. Rex's growl carried from Lily's room, low and sustained. The dog had heard it too. Marcus moved into the hallway, phone flashlight cutting through darkness. Rex stood at the top of the stairs, every muscle taut, staring down into the foyer. Marcus joined him, peering into the gloom below. Nothing visible, no movement, but the feeling of being watched pressed against his skin like humidity. Stay with Lily. Marcus gave the command quietly, and Rex obeyed instantly, returning to guard post at the child's bedside. Marcus descended alone, each step an exercise in controlled fear. The marble foyer stretched empty below, exactly as they'd left it. But something had changed. He felt it before he saw it. A door that had been closed now standing ajar. The library. They'd closed that door, Marcus was certain. He remembered checking it specifically, making sure the house was secured before they went upstairs. He approached slowly, every sense hyper-alert. The door swung open at his touch, revealing the library's darkness beyond. Marcus swept his flashlight across rows of bookshelves, finding nothing but leather spines and dust. Then the beam caught something on the reading table near the window. A journal, open, dust around it disturbed as if by a hand. Marcus moved closer, forcing himself to breathe steadily. The journal was old, leather-bound, filled with Eleanor's handwriting. The page it was open to was dated 6 months ago. I know my time is short. The doctors give me weeks, maybe days, but I have no regrets. This house has been my refuge from a world that tried to break me, and now it will be his. Marcus is stronger than he knows, stronger even than the blood that rejected him. He will find what I've left. He will understand why I chose him. He must. Marcus's hands shook as he read. Eleanor had known death was coming, had prepared for it, had arranged everything down to this moment. But the journal had been closed when they arrived. He was certain, which meant someone had been here, in the house, while they slept. Someone had opened this book to this specific page. Someone wanted him to read these words. "Welcome home, Marcus." The whisper came from everywhere and nowhere, so faint he almost convinced himself he'd imagined it. Female voice, elderly, familiar in a way that made no sense because he'd never heard Eleanor speak. Marcus spun, flashlight cutting wild arcs through the library. Empty, no one. Just books and shadows and the impossible echo of words that couldn't have been spoken. He grabbed the journal and backed out of the room, pulse hammering. This wasn't PTSD. Rex had heard the footsteps too. The door had opened itself. The journal had been placed deliberately. Something in this house was wrong or right in ways that defied rational explanation. Marcus took the stairs two at a time, returning to Lily's room. She slept peacefully, Rex still on guard, the dog's eyes tracking Marcus's agitated movements. Marcus sank into the chair beside the bed, journal clutched in his hands, and forced himself to read more. The entries detailed Eleanor's life, her choices, her regrets. A woman who'd fled an abusive family, built a fortune through intelligence and determination, spent 40 years watching Marcus from a distance. The final entries were addressed directly to him. "If you're reading this, you found the house. Good. Derek will come looking. He's been searching for my assets for 2 decades. Let him search. What matters most is hidden where only you can find it. Follow what doesn't make sense. Trust what seems impossible. And Marcus, keep Lily close. She sees more clearly than you do." Marcus looked at his sleeping daughter. 9 years old and already carrying wisdom earned through loss. She'd navigated his PTSD with more grace than most adults managed. She'd stood up to Derek in that conference room. She'd decided without hesitation that this house was theirs, that Aunt Eleanor's ghost was benevolent, that treasure hunting was the adventure they needed. Maybe she was right. Maybe children understood mysteries better than traumatized veterans did. Marcus settled into the chair, determined to stay awake, to guard his daughter and process the impossible. But exhaustion finally won, dragging him under into restless sleep, punctuated by dreams of footsteps and whispers, and a woman he had never known who'd somehow known him completely. When morning light filtered through the window, turning frost to diamonds, Lily's excited voice pulled Marcus fully awake. "Daddy, Rex found something. You have to see." Marcus stumbled out of the chair, muscles protesting 2 days of driving and 1 night of sitting upright. Lily was already dressed, bouncing with the limitless energy of childhood, pointing at Rex, who stood at the bedroom door with something in his mouth. He went downstairs and came back with this. "I think it's important." Marcus took the object from Rex's gentle grip. A small wooden box carved with the same vine pattern as the front door, sealed with a brass clasp. No dust on it. Recently placed, recently found. The box that Rex had retrieved sat in Marcus's palm, light but solid, its brass clasp warm, as if someone had just been holding it. The box opened with surprising ease, the brass clasp yielding under Marcus's thumb as if recently oiled. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay a single brass key and a folded note in Eleanor's precise handwriting. "For the Vault Guardian. The date a grandmother's heart broke and healed. That's your combination. Let Lily solve it. Children see what we've forgotten how to look for." Lily leaned over his arm, studying the key with solemn focus. Her finger traced the worn edges. "A vault? Like in banks? We have a vault?" Marcus turned the key over, noting the unusual length, the complexity of the teeth. This wasn't hardware store standard. This opened something serious, something built to last and protect. The note's cryptic reference to dates and broken hearts meant nothing to him, but Eleanor's instruction was clear. "Let Lily solve it. I don't know what we have yet, but Aunt Eleanor wants you to figure it out." Marcus handed his daughter the note. "What do you think it means?" Lily read slowly, lips moving over the words, her face scrunched in concentration, that expression Rachel used to call her thinking face. Nose wrinkled, eyes narrowed, totally absorbed. After a moment, she looked up with sudden brightness. "We need to explore more. Vaults are hidden. That's what makes them secret. The logic was irrefutable. Marcus pocketed the key and followed his daughter downstairs, Rex trailing with the alert patience of a working dog who understood missions came in many forms. Morning light through the tall windows revealed details missed in last night's darkness. The intricate ceiling moldings, the quality of craftsmanship in every door frame, the sense that wealth had been applied with taste rather than ostentation. Lily moved through rooms with the fearless curiosity of childhood, pulling dust sheets off furniture, examining paintings, opening drawers. In the parlor, she discovered a collection of photographs in silver frames, decades of images showing Eleanor at different ages. A young woman with defiant eyes standing beside an easel. Middle-aged Eleanor shaking hands with men in business suits. Elderly Eleanor in this very room, the background unmistakable, her expression carrying satisfaction and sadness in equal measure. She was pretty, and she looks kind. Lily traced Eleanor's face through the glass. Why didn't she ever visit us? The question cut deeper than a child could understand. Marcus chose truth over comfort. Sometimes families break apart. Sometimes people have to love each other from far away because being close is too dangerous. Because of Grandma and Uncle Derek? The insight shouldn't have surprised him. Lily had witnessed enough family toxicity to recognize patterns. She'd been there when the Lewis grandparents told Marcus he was unfit. She'd heard Derek's casual cruelty yesterday. 9 years old and already learning that blood ties guaranteed nothing except genetic similarity. Yeah, baby, because of them. Lily nodded, accepting this, then turned back to her exploration. She worked methodically, checking every room on the first floor, searching for something she couldn't name but would recognize when found. Rex shadowed her movements, occasionally sniffing corners or pawing at baseboards. The dog's behavior had shifted from protective to investigative, following some scent or instinct that Marcus couldn't detect. The library drew Lily back despite Marcus's discomfort with the room. She moved along the bookshelves, running her fingers across spines, pulling volumes out to examine titles. History, philosophy, art criticism, technical manuals on subjects ranging from carpentry to computer programming. Eleanor had been voracious, eclectic, someone who consumed knowledge the way others consumed entertainment. Lily stopped at the far wall, head tilted, studying something Marcus couldn't see. She reached up to touch the wooden paneling, pressing gently. Her small voice carried certainty. Daddy, this sounds different. Hollow. Marcus joined her, rapping his knuckles against the wood. Solid in most places, but where Lily indicated, hollow, definitely. He ran his hands along the panel edges, searching for seams or mechanisms. Nothing obvious presented itself, but children had advantages adults surrendered. They were closer to the ground, their perspective different, their expectations unclouded by assumptions. Rex, check. Marcus gave the command more from habit than expectation, but the dog responded immediately, nosing along the base of the panel. Rex pawed twice at a specific spot, then sat and barked, his signal for found something important. Marcus knelt, examining where Rex indicated. A small indentation in the wood, barely visible, positioned too low for adult eye level, but perfect for a kneeling child. Marcus pressed it. Something clicked deep within the wall. The entire panel swung inward with smooth silence, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling upward into darkness. Lily's gasp carried pure delight. Secret passage. Aunt Eleanor built us a secret passage. The stairs were steep, clearly not designed for regular use. Marcus went first, phone flashlight illuminating stone steps worn smooth by decades of footsteps. The passage climbed between walls, tight and claustrophobic, emerging into a large space that stole Marcus's breath. Eleanor's studio occupied the entire third floor, hidden above the house's conventional layout. Skylights filtered morning sun through snow, casting the room an ethereal blue-white luminescence. Canvases covered every wall, landscapes, portraits, abstract compositions that captured emotion in color and form. Paint-splattered tables held brushes, palettes, jars of pigments arranged with obsessive organization. This was where Eleanor had lived her real life, away from the world below, creating art no one had been permitted to see. Lily spun slowly, taking in the impossible beauty. She was an artist, a real artist. Look at all of this. Marcus moved to the center easel, where an unfinished painting stopped his heart. Blackwood Estate rendered in winter, snow covering everything, smoke rising from chimneys. In the foreground, approaching the front door, three figures. A man, a small child holding the man's hand. The detail was extraordinary. Rex's distinctive markings, Lily's blue winter coat, Marcus's military posture even in civilian clothes. Eleanor had painted their arrival before it happened, had imagined this moment with such precision that Marcus could almost believe in prophecy. That's us. Lily pressed close to his side. How did she know what I look like? How did she know Rex? Marcus had no answer. Coincidence felt inadequate. Eleanor couldn't have known they'd arrived during a blizzard, couldn't have predicted Lily's coat color or Rex's placement. Yet here was evidence suggesting otherwise. Proof that a dead woman had seen the future or had orchestrated events with such precision that prediction became unnecessary. Against the far wall, Lily discovered sketchbooks, stacked chronologically, dates written on each spine. She opened the most recent, flipping through pages of drawings, the house in different seasons, portraits of people Marcus didn't recognize, and, increasingly toward the end, sketches of a child's face from multiple angles. Different ages, showing growth from infant to approximately 9 years old. The final sketch was dated 3 months before Eleanor's death. A girl who could have been Lily's twin, down to the small scar on her chin from a playground fall 2 years ago. Daddy, she drew me. She drew me at all my ages, even the scar. Lily touched the drawing, then her own chin. That's impossible. Yeah, it is. Marcus's voice came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat. Unless she had pictures, maybe someone sent her photos of you. But that raised different questions. Who had been feeding Eleanor information? Who had been watching them, documenting Lily's growth, providing updates to a woman the family had ostracized? The surveillance implications should have frightened Marcus, but instead he felt something closer to gratitude. Someone had cared enough to keep Eleanor informed. Someone had helped her plan for this moment. Lily moved to a wooden cabinet against the wall, its surface carved with the same vine pattern that decorated the front door in the mysterious box. She tried the handle, locked. Then she noticed something Marcus missed. A small panel above the handle, smooth wood that didn't quite match the surrounding grain. Daddy, look, I think it's a puzzle. Marcus examined the panel. Pressure sensitive, slightly yielding under his touch. He pressed different sections experimentally, feeling mechanisms engage and release. After several attempts, a pattern emerged. The panel had 4 distinct zones that clicked when pushed in sequence. A combination lock built into wood, elegant and completely hidden unless you knew to look. Lily pulled Eleanor's note from her pocket, reading aloud. The date, a grandmother's heart broke and healed. That's the combination. Marcus's mind worked through possibilities. Eleanor's son, his father, had been born March 12, 1969. That must have been when her heart broke, giving up a child to adoption. But when did it heal? When she learned about Marcus? When she discovered he had Lily? Try my birthday. Lily's suggestion cut through Marcus's mental calculations. Maybe finding out about me healed her heart. The logic held beautiful simplicity. Marcus translated Lily's birth date into numbers. 3/12/19, March 12, 2019, but that made no sense. Unless 3 for March, 12 for the well, and 19 for 2019 shortened. That matched Eleanor's son's birthday month and day, the year representing Lily's birth. Marcus pressed the zones in sequence. 3 clicks, 12 clicks, 1 click, 9 clicks. The final mechanism engaged with a solid thunk. The cabinet door swung open, revealing a metal box with a keyhole that perfectly matched the brass key from this morning. Lily bounced on her toes. I solved it. I solved Aunt Eleanor's puzzle. You did, treasure hunter. You absolutely did. Marcus inserted the key, turned it. The box opened to reveal a single folded paper and another key, this one larger, more modern, attached to a tag reading, Vault Level Beret. Emergency access. The paper was another note from Eleanor. Marcus and Lily, if you're reading this, you've proven you work better as a team than apart. The vault requires both of you. Follow the passage behind this cabinet. The final lock needs the poem spoken aloud in Lily's voice. Eleanor designed it that way for a reason. Children carry truth adults forget. Lily practically vibrated with excitement. There's more? There's a whole vault? Marcus examined the cabinet's interior. The back panel wasn't solid wood, but another hidden door, this one with a simple latch. It swung inward, revealing a descending staircase carved from stone, lit by dim emergency lighting that flickered on as they approached. The temperature dropped as they descended, each step taking them deeper into what must be the mountain bedrock beneath the house. The passage leveled out after 30 feet, opening into a chamber that belonged in a bank rather than a residence. Climate-controlled air hummed from hidden vents. LED strips provided cold, bright illumination. And at the chamber's center stood a vault door that would have stopped any conventional burglar. 10 inches of steel, combination lock, biometric scanner, and a small bronze plaque engraved with a poem. Lily read the words carefully. In shadows deep where truth lies still, where time cannot its secrets kill, the rightful one by courage led shall claim the path the lost ones tread. The moment she finished, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. The biometric scanner flashed green despite no fingerprint being provided. Mechanical locks began disengaging, heavy bolts retracting with precision that spoke of expensive engineering. The vault door swung open smoothly, revealing an interior that made Marcus's knees weak. Rows of climate-controlled cases lined 3 walls, each containing documents sealed in protective plastic. Bearer bonds, stock certificates from companies Marcus recognized, tech giants from their earliest days. Investments made when success was uncertain, but potential was visible to those who looked carefully. A quick mental calculation suggested values in the tens of millions, possibly higher. The 4th wall held something different, a glass case containing land deeds organized by state. Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, thousands of acres documented with survey maps and legal descriptions. Below the deeds, locked drawers labeled with years ranging from 1970 to 2020. And on a central table, a leather briefcase stood alone, positioned like an offering. Lily whispered, awestruck, "Daddy, are we rich?" Marcus opened the briefcase with shaking hands. Inside, a single typed document summarized Eleanor's entire estate. Total liquid assets, $400,000. Land holdings valued separately. Instructions for executor enclosed. Beneficiary, Marcus Thomas Hayes and all his direct descendants in perpetuity. The number didn't feel real. 3 months ago, Marcus had been calculating whether they could afford both electricity and heat. Yesterday, his brother had publicly disowned him. This morning, he was apparently wealthier than anyone in his family had ever been, holding wealth that could fund Lily's entire education, could pay for therapy until his PTSD became manageable, could build a future neither of them had dared imagine. Lily tugged his sleeve. "Does this mean we get to stay? That I don't have to live with Grandma and Grandpa Lewis?" The custody case. Marcus had almost forgotten in the shock of discovery, but Lily hadn't. Of course she hadn't. It was her life being decided, her future hanging on whether a judge believed Marcus capable of providing stability. This vault, this wealth, this estate, it changed everything. Stable housing, generational security, the kind of foundation that family court valued above all else. "Yeah, baby, this means we get to stay." Marcus pulled Lily into a hug, feeling her small body pressed against his chest, her heart hammering with excitement and relief. "Nobody's taking you anywhere." Rex, who'd been patiently waiting at the vault entrance, suddenly went rigid, his ears pinned forward, focusing on something beyond the chamber. A low growl built in his chest, not the curious alert from earlier, but the warning rumble that preceded danger. Marcus's military instincts fired instantly. He pulled Lily behind him, scanning for threats. The chamber had only one entrance, the stairway they descended. If someone was coming, they'd be trapped. No alternate exit visible, no tactical advantage except the narrow approach that would funnel intruders into a kill zone if this were combat. But this wasn't combat. This was Montana, and they were in a house that should have been empty, and someone was approaching fast enough that Rex considered them a threat. Footsteps echoed down the stone stairs. Multiple sets, heavy boots moving with purpose. Then Derek's voice carried ahead, confident and cruel. Marcus, I know you're down here. Come out and let's discuss this like adults. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Derek had found them already. Less than 18 hours since they had arrived, and his brother had tracked them across 2,000 miles. The speed suggested preparation. Derek must have known about Blackwood Estate before the will reading, must have been waiting for Marcus to lead him to Eleanor's hidden assets. Victoria's sharper voice followed. Marcus, bringing a child to this death trap is criminal negligence. We're documenting everything for the custody hearing. Lily's hand gripped Marcus's jacket, her whisper barely audible. How did they find us? Marcus had no answer. Oh, he told no one where they were going. Sarah Mitchell had promised confidentiality. Unless Derek had been monitoring Marcus's movements, tracking his phone, following them west while maintaining distance. The paranoia Marcus usually fought against suddenly felt like validated threat assessment. A third voice joined the others, smooth and lawyerly. Mr. Hayes, this is Richard Coleman, legal counsel. We need to discuss the estate transfer immediately. There are irregularities that require resolution. 3 against 1. Marcus had faced worse odds in Afghanistan, but never with his daughter present, never trapped in a basement chamber with a fortune at his back and family at his throat. He looked around desperately for options. The vault itself was a fortress, but staying inside meant siege. The passage offered the only exit, currently blocked by Derek's approach. Lily pulled on his jacket, her voice urgent. Daddy, the phone. That old phone in the library upstairs. Remember? It was plugged in. Marcus remembered. A rotary phone on Eleanor's desk, ancient technology that should have been decorative but had shown a dial tone when he'd tested it yesterday. Landlines still worked when cell towers failed, when isolation was complete. If Lily could reach it, can you get there without them seeing you? Lily nodded, determination replacing fear. I'm small. I'm quiet. I can sneak. Call 911. Tell them men broke into our house and we're scared. Give them the address, Blackwood Estate, Forest Service Road 47. Can you remember that? Yes, FSR 47, I remember. Lily paused. What about you and Rex? We're going to have a conversation with Uncle Derek. Buy you time. Marcus cupped her face, forcing confidence he didn't feel. Stay hidden until help comes. You're the smartest, bravest girl I know. You can do this. Lily kissed his cheek quickly, then slipped toward a shadow at the chamber's edge that Marcus hadn't noticed. A maintenance access tunnel, narrow enough that a child could navigate, but an adult would struggle. She disappeared into it like smoke, leaving Marcus and Rex to face the approaching threat alone. Marcus stepped out of the vault, positioning himself in the passage so Derek would have to go through him to reach the chamber. Rex moved to his side, teeth bared, every inch the combat dog he'd been trained to be. Whatever happened next, Derek would learn that cornering Marcus Hayes wasn't the easy victory he'd anticipated. Derek emerged from the stairwell first, his expensive suit somehow still pristine despite the journey. Victoria followed in designer winterwear that cost more than Marcus's truck. Coleman brought up the rear, briefcase in hand, already recording on his phone, documenting evidence, building cases, destroying lives with paperwork. Derek's expression shifted when he saw the vault behind Marcus, saw the glimpse of bearer bonds and documents visible through the open door. Greed and triumph warred on his face. Well, little brother found the jackpot. I knew Eleanor was hiding something, but this, he let out a low whistle. This is generational wealth, and you thought you could keep it to yourself? Marcus kept his voice level. This property belongs to me. You're trespassing. Leave before I call the sheriff. Derek laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Call the sheriff? With what phone? We're 20 miles from town. No cell signal. You're isolated, unstable, and clearly incompetent if you think you can manage this kind of estate. He gestured at Coleman. Richard has already filed preliminary paperwork. Eleanor's will is being challenged on grounds of undue influence and mental incompetence. Victoria stepped closer, her expression calculating beneath false sympathy. Marcus, be reasonable. You're living in a condemned building with a 9-year-old. The house has no heat, no running water, structural damage throughout. You brought Lily into danger. Child Protective Services will love our documentation. The words were designed to wound, and they succeeded. Marcus had brought Lily here in desperation, racing a blizzard, trusting a dead woman's letter. He'd exposed his daughter to isolation and unknown risks, but he'd also given her hope. He'd shown her that fighting back was possible, that family could mean something beyond cruelty. Rex's growl deepened, the dog reading Marcus's rising anger. Coleman raised his phone higher. "Mr. Hayes, I'm recording this conversation. Any threatening behavior will be noted." "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm telling you to leave my property." Marcus held Derek's gaze. "You spent 20 years looking for Eleanor's assets. She made sure you'd never find them. She chose me specifically because she knew what you'd do, exactly what you're doing now." Derek's smile thinned. "She chose you because senility and cancer destroyed her judgment. No sane person leaves a fortune to a PTSD case who can barely hold his life together." The insult should have triggered Marcus's panic response, the shame spiral that followed any reminder of his broken pieces. Instead, Marcus felt something different crystallize in his chest. Eleanor hadn't chosen him despite his trauma. She'd chosen him because of everything he'd survived, because he understood that strength came in forms Derek's privileged life had never required. "You're right. I have PTSD. I have panic attacks. I wake up screaming sometimes." Marcus's voice stayed steady. "But I also have a daughter who loves me, a dog who trusts me, and apparently an aunt who believed I was worth more than all of you combined. So here's what's happening. You're leaving. You're withdrawing the custody challenge. And you're never contacting me or Lily again." Victoria scoffed. "You think you can dictate terms? We have lawyers, money, influence, and I have evidence." The lie came smoothly, born from 3 tours of tactical deception. Eleanor documented everything. Your financial crimes, Derek. The embezzlement from the family business in '98. The fraud scheme that bankrupted investors in 2005. The tax evasion from 2010 through 2015. Marcus watched his brother's face drain of color. "She kept everything. Insurance, she called it, for when you inevitably came after what was mine." Coleman's phone lowered slightly. Derek's confident posture cracked. Even Victoria looked uncertain. The bluff worked because it contained enough truth. Eleanor had been meticulous, and men like Derek always had secrets worth hiding. "You're lying." Derek's voice lacked conviction. "You don't have anything. Try me. File your custody motion. Challenge the will. See what gets released to prosecutors." Marcus shifted slightly, Rex moving with him in perfect synchronization. "Or walk away now while you still can." The standoff stretched, tension building until it felt physical. Derek's calculation was visible. Weigh the potential fortune against the risk of criminal exposure. Decide which loss he could better survive. Coleman whispered something urgent in Derek's ear. Victoria's expression had shifted from cruelty to fear. Then, distant but growing louder, a sound that changed everything. Sirens. Multiple vehicles approaching fast. The distinctive wail of law enforcement cutting through mountain silence. Derek's face twisted with confusion. "How? My daughter called 911. While you were busy threatening us, she was being smart." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Lily's good at solving problems. Eleanor knew that. She designed the vault's voice lock specifically for a child's voice. Lily opened doors you could never have found." The sirens grew louder, multiple engines now audible over the alarm. Derek's advantage evaporated as flashing lights began reflecting off stone walls. Victoria grabbed Derek's arm. "We need to leave. Now." Coleman was already moving toward the stairs, professional survival instinct overriding client loyalty. Derek hesitated, his gaze lingering on the vault's open door, on the visible fortune he'd spent 2 decades seeking. But even Derek understood when retreat was the only option. "This isn't over, Marcus. You can't hide behind one lucky phone call forever." "I'm not hiding. I'm home." Marcus stood firm as his brother retreated. "This is my house, my land, my daughter's future, and you're never touching any of it again." Derek, Victoria, and Coleman scrambled up the stairs as heavy boots descended from above. Sheriff Tom Garrett appeared first, hand resting near his holster, taking in the scene with practiced assessment. 2 deputies followed, positioning themselves tactically. Behind them came faces Marcus didn't recognize. Older men and women in practical winter clothing, townspeople by their bearing, expressions showing concern rather than aggression. Tom's voice carried mountain authority. Somebody want to tell me why I'm responding to a breaking and entering call at Blackwood Estate? Marcus gestured at Derek's retreating back. My brother and his associates broke into my home. My daughter called for help because they were threatening us. Tom nodded slowly, then called up the stairs. Derek Hayes? That you up there? We had words about trespassing here yesterday. Told you this property was off limits during probate. Derek's voice drifted back, defensive. Sheriff, this is a family matter. We were just trespassing, breaking and entering, intimidating a veteran and his child. Tom cut him off. Step outside now. We'll discuss this in town. The sheriff turned to Marcus. You and your girl okay? We're fine now. Thank you for coming so fast. Thank Lily. Kid gave the dispatcher a perfect description. 3 adults, 1 recording on phone, specific threats about custody. Smart girl you got there. Tom's expression softened. Also thank Eleanor's friends. Word spreads fast in Pine Haven when something happens at Blackwood. We've been waiting 40 years for Eleanor's heir to finally arrive. An older woman pushed past the deputies, her face lined with weather and years, but her eyes bright with purpose. She carried a box that smelled like fresh baking. I'm Maggie Chen, ran the Pine Haven Diner for 35 years. Eleanor was my friend. She thrust the box at Marcus, brought food, figured you could use a hot meal after your welcome committee. More townspeople filtered into the chamber, each carrying something. Blankets, thermoses of coffee, a portable heater. They moved with the efficiency of people who'd done this before, who understood mountain isolation and looked after their own. An elderly man with carpenter's hands approached. Harold Jenkins, I'll get your generator running proper. Eleanor always kept it maintained, but 6 months without use, things seize up. Marcus stood overwhelmed as strangers became neighbors, as Eleanor's community extended itself to include him and Lily by simple virtue of connection. These people had loved his aunt, had benefited from her quiet generosity, and now paid that forward without expectation or hesitation. Tom pulled Marcus aside. Derek's going to cause problems. Men like him don't walk away from this kind of money without a fight. But Pine Haven takes care of its own. Eleanor made sure of that for decades. Now it's our turn to make sure her family gets the same protection. I don't understand why she never told me. Why she watched from distance instead of... Marcus couldn't finish the thought. Eleanor had her reasons. Some of them she shared, some she took to the grave. Tom's expression carried weight of knowledge he wouldn't fully reveal. What matters is you're here now, you and that brave little girl. Speaking of which, where is Lily? As if summoned, Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, Rex at her side. Her face was flushed with pride. I did it, Daddy. I called 911 just like you taught me. I told them 3 bad men were scaring us, and they came really fast. Marcus climbed the stairs and swept Lily into his arms, holding her tight while she laughed. Rex barked once, sharp and triumphant, celebration and relief combined. They'd survived. They'd fought back. And for the first time since Rachel died, Marcus felt something beyond survival. He felt hope that maybe, possibly, they could actually build the life Eleanor had envisioned. Maggie's warm voice carried from below. Bring that child down here. She needs hot chocolate and stories about her great-aunt Eleanor. We've got years of them saved up. Marcus carried Lily downstairs, surrounded by strangers who'd become allies in the space of an emergency. The vault stood open behind them, wealth beyond imagination waiting to be managed. But what mattered more was the community gathering in a stone chamber beneath a mountain house, offering warmth and protection to family they'd never met, but already claimed as their own. Derek was gone, but his threat remained. The custody hearing still loomed 3 weeks away. The inheritance would face legal challenges that could drag through courts for years. Nothing was settled, nothing guaranteed. But Marcus had something now that he'd lacked in that Manhattan law office. He had a home. He had allies. He had proof that Eleanor had believed in him enough to build this entire elaborate treasure hunt. And he had Lily, safe in his arms, brave and brilliant, and absolutely certain they'd won. Outside, through the chamber's ventilation grates, they could hear Derek's raised voice arguing with deputies. Tom's patient responses. The sound of a vehicle starting, pulling away, carrying threats that would return, but couldn't break what was being built here in Eleanor's hidden fortress. Maggie handed Lily a steaming cup. Your aunt used to say the best revenge against those who doubt you is building something beautiful they can't touch. Looks like you two are off to a good start. Lily sipped her chocolate, then looked up at Marcus with absolute trust. Daddy, I like our house. Can we keep it forever? Marcus met his daughter's eyes and spoke the truth Eleanor had left for him to discover. Yeah, treasure hunter. Forever. 4 months transformed Blackwood Estate from haunted fortress into something that breathed with purpose. Spring arrived late in the Montana mountains, snow melting to reveal ground that hadn't been worked in decades. Pine forests shedding their white burdens to stand green and vital against impossible blue sky. Marcus worked the land with hands that had forgotten what creation felt like after years of survival mode, teaching Lily skills his own grandfather had taught him before the family fractured into pieces too sharp to reassemble. The custody hearing had ended in victory so complete that even the Lewis family's expensive attorney had recommended withdrawal. Stable housing, community support, financial security beyond question. The judge had looked at documentation and then at Lily's face when asked where she wanted to live, and the answer had been obvious. Lily had testimony prepared, rehearsed with Sarah Mitchell's gentle coaching, but in the end she'd simply stood and stated with 9-year-old certainty, my dad isn't perfect, but he's mine, and I'm staying with him. The courthouse had erupted in applause from Pine Haven residents who'd packed every bench, and Marcus had cried in front of strangers who'd become family faster than biology ever managed. Derek hadn't attended. Neither had Victoria. Their legal challenges to Eleanor's will had collapsed when Sarah produced documentation so thorough that Coleman himself had advised immediate withdrawal. Whatever crimes Derek had committed, Eleanor had chronicled them with prosecutorial precision, and the threat of exposure proved more powerful than greed. Now spring brought possibility. Lily helped Marcus repair the generator housing, her small hands fitting into spaces his couldn't reach, passing tools with the efficiency of a surgical nurse. She'd absorbed carpentry basics with frightening speed, measuring twice and cutting once, understanding that mistakes with wood were lessons, but mistakes with people sometimes couldn't be fixed. They worked side by side most mornings, building skills and structures both, while Rex patrolled the property with the contentment of a Mo who'd finally found permanent posting. The idea emerged during breakfast one morning in the newly renovated kitchen. Lily had been sketching in her notebook, drawings of rooms and people and possibilities. She slid the paper across the table, syrup sticky from the pancakes Maggie had taught her to make. Daddy, what if other kids whose parents have PTSD could come here? Not forever, but like, to learn that it's okay. Marcus studied the drawing, a child's rendering of Blackwood Estate, but with additions, playground equipment, gardens, multiple families visible through windows. The vision was ambitious, almost overwhelming, but it carried logic that punched through Marcus's instinctive resistance to grand plans. He'd spent months in VA waiting rooms watching veterans struggle in isolation, watching their families fracture under pressure that community could have eased. Eleanor had built this estate over 40 years. Maybe it was meant for more than one small family's salvation. You're talking about turning our home into a center for veterans and their kids? Lily nodded vigorously, her dark hair catching morning light. Eleanor's Haven. We could call it Eleanor's Haven. She helped people in Pine Haven for years. Now we help people everywhere. The name settled into Marcus's chest with weight that felt like destiny or responsibility or both. Sarah had mentioned in passing that Eleanor's liquid assets required management decisions, that $265 million couldn't simply sit in accounts accumulating without purpose. Marcus had been paralyzed by the enormity, unable to imagine himself as someone who controlled that kind of wealth. But Lily's vision provided framework. Use it for healing. Transform personal salvation into communal resource. Build what Eleanor had spent her life building, refuge for those the world had broken. That's a big project, baby. That's years of work, lots of people, constant responsibility. Lily met his eyes with Rachel's unflinching directness. You're always saying PTSD doesn't make you broken, just hurt. Hurt people helping hurt people. That's what makes everyone better, right? Marcus recognized his own therapy mantras reflected back. refined through a child's clarity into something approaching wisdom. He'd been teaching Lily that trauma was survivable, that asking for help showed strength, that community mattered more than individual suffering. Now she was asking him to embody those principles at scale. Okay, let's do it. Eleanor's Haven, Veterans and Family Recovery Center. Marcus extended his hand formally. Partners? Lily shook solemnly, then grinned. Partners. Can I design the kids' wing? You can design whatever you want, treasure hunter. This is your legacy too. The months that followed blurred into construction, managed by Harold Jenkins and his network of retired builders who worked for rates that barely covered materials. The community understood that Blackwood Estate, becoming a recovery center, meant Pine Haven would become a destination for people seeking healing. And healing populations needed infrastructure. The diner expanded, the medical clinic added staff. The town itself transformed alongside the estate. Economic revival following Eleanor's final gift, like spring following winter. Marcus divided time between physical labor and bureaucratic navigation, learning nonprofit structures with Sarah's patient guidance, while his hands remembered skills dormant since before deployment. Lily worked alongside him when school allowed, and on weekends the entire town seemed to converge on the property, bringing food, expertise, stories about Eleanor that revealed a woman even more complex than her journal suggested. Maggie told how Eleanor had funded the clinic anonymously when Harold's wife needed cancer treatment the hospital wouldn't cover. Doc Patterson explained Eleanor's scholarship program that had sent 17 local kids to college over 3 decades. Tom described how Eleanor had bought the failing lumber mill in 2008 just to keep it operating through the recession, saving 40 families from bankruptcy. Eleanor had been Pine Haven's invisible guardian, and now they were determined that her heir would succeed in ways she'd never been permitted to attempt publicly. The first resident families arrived in late summer. James Chen came with his wife and 7-year-old son Ethan, looking for space where his missing leg and nightmares wouldn't define him completely. Linda Torres brought her daughter Sophia and enough medication to stock a pharmacy, exhausted from field hospital memories that wouldn't fade. Bobby Jackson arrived alone but gradually, and brought his parents after 2 weeks because sometimes healing required witnessing someone else's progress before believing in your own. Lily appointed herself unofficial greeter and guide, showing new children around with proprietorial pride, explaining where everything was and why the house didn't need to be scary, even though it looked like it should be haunted. She organized the kids into informal groups based on age and interest, created a lending library from Eleanor's collection, established rules about respecting quiet time, and always telling an adult if parents seemed too sad to function. 9 years old and already understanding that children often parented their parents through the hardest moments. Marcus watched his daughter bloom into something he hadn't anticipated. Not just survivor, but leader. Not just victim of circumstance, but architect of solutions. She reminded him constantly that healing wasn't about eliminating damage, but learning to build around it, that broken things could become stronger at the mended places if the repair work was done with care rather than shame. Rex's role evolved too. The dog who'd spent 3 years keeping one broken veteran functional discovered purpose in training new service dogs, teaching rescue animals the specific skills that combat veterans needed. The K-9 program became central to Eleanor's Haven, and Rex appointed himself head instructor with the seriousness of a career NCO who understood that training could mean the difference between functioning and drowning. By October, 20 veterans and their families called Blackwood Estate home, with waiting lists growing weekly. Marcus had hired staff, therapists, medical personnel, administrative support, transforming Eleanor's private refuge into professional operation. The vault's contents funded everything, barely touching the principal, while interest alone covered operational costs that would have bankrupted conventional nonprofits. Eleanor had built an empire specifically so it could be dismantled into something better. The transformation nearly complete, Marcus stood one evening on the front porch watching Lily play tag with Ethan and Sophia and 3 other children whose laughter echoed off mountains that had known only silence for decades. Rex supervised from his favorite spot, the old dog's muzzle showing gray but his eyes still sharp and protective. This was what victory looked like, not military triumph or legal conquest, but simply space where damaged people could attempt repair without judgment. Then a car appeared on the long drive, expensive and out of place, and Marcus's chest tightened, recognizing Derek's Mercedes. 10 months since that blizzard drive to Montana, 6 months of silence, and now his brother returned at the moment when Marcus finally felt secure in what they'd built. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Lily noticed the car and moved to Marcus's side instantly, her hand finding his. "Should I get Sheriff Tom?" "Not yet. Let's see what he wants." Marcus called Rex, who came immediately and positioned himself as barrier. "But stay close." Derek emerged from the vehicle looking nothing like the polished executive who dismissed Marcus in Manhattan. His suit was cheaper, rumpled from travel. His face carried lines that hadn't existed 6 months ago, exhaustion etched deep enough to read from 20 feet. He moved slowly, hesitantly, as if approaching territory where he knew himself unwelcome. Victoria followed from the passenger side, and her transformation was even more stark. Designer clothes replaced by practical jeans and fleece jacket. No jewelry, no makeup, just a woman who looked fundamentally tired in ways wealth couldn't address. They approached the porch steps and stopped, waiting for permission to come closer. Marcus descended to meet them, keeping himself between them and Lily. "You're trespassing. Again." Derek raised both hands, empty and non-threatening. "I know, I'm not here to cause trouble, Marcus. I'm here to—" His voice cracked. "I'm here to ask for help." The words landed wrong, impossible coming from someone whose entire identity had been built on having more, being better, winning every contest that mattered and some that didn't. Derek asking for help made as much sense as gravity reversing. Victoria spoke next, her voice stripped of its cruel edge. "We lost everything. The house, the investments, my marriage to Derek, because I finally realized what he was. I'm living in a motel outside town. I have $300 and a nursing degree I haven't used in 15 years because I was too busy being a trophy wife." Marcus processed this, calculating whether it was manipulation or genuine desperation. Derek had controlled millions. Their mother's inheritance alone should have sustained comfortable lives indefinitely. For both of them to be destitute required catastrophic decisions or systematic destruction. "What happened to the 12 million? Derek laughed, the sound hollow and self-aware. "Legal fees, 800,000 fighting Eleanor's will, another 400 fighting your custody case. Then the IRS investigation started. Somebody sent them documentation about discrepancies in my tax filings going back 15 years. Coleman abandoned ship when the criminal exposure became real. Without his firm's protection, other creditors came calling. The house was mortgaged for loans I'd hidden from Victoria. The investments were leveraged against debts I couldn't cover. It collapsed fast, Marcus. 3 months from comfortable to bankrupt." The story tracked with Sarah's warnings about Derek's financial crimes. Eleanor's documentation had been insurance against exactly this scenario, ensuring that if Derek attacked, his own exposure would force retreat. But Marcus hadn't actually released anything to authorities, which meant someone else had, someone who'd accessed Eleanor's archived evidence and decided Derek needed to face consequences regardless of whether Marcus pursued them. "You think I reported you? Doesn't matter who, you had the documentation. You threatened to use it. The threat was enough to make me realize I'd destroyed my life chasing money I didn't need from family I should have protected." Derek's eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "I was wrong about everything. About you, about Eleanor, about what matters. And I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm asking anyway." Lily tugged Marcus's sleeve, her whisper carrying urgency. "Daddy, can we talk? Just us?" Marcus excused himself and walked with Lily out of Derek's earshot. She studied him seriously, weighing something in her child's mind that adults often missed. "Uncle Derek looks like you used to look, after Mama died, before we came here." The observation hit hard because it was accurate. Derek carried the same hollow-eyed desperation Marcus had worn for 2 years, the expression of someone who'd lost everything and couldn't find solid ground. Marcus had survived that fall because Rex had been there, because Lily had needed him, because Eleanor had built a safety net from beyond the grave. Derek had no equivalent support. "That doesn't mean we have to help him, baby. He was cruel to us." "I know. But you always tell the veterans here that healing is possible if you're willing to work. What if Uncle Derek is willing?" Lily's expression carried the simple logic of someone who hadn't learned cynicism yet. What if giving him a chance is what Aunt Eleanor would want? Marcus wanted to reject the idea immediately. Derek didn't deserve redemption. He'd spent decades being exactly who he'd chosen to be. Cruel, greedy, willing to destroy family for advantage. But Eleanor's journals had revealed her own history, her father's abuse, her flight from family that had tried to break her. She'd spent 40 years building wealth specifically to protect Marcus from that same cruelty. Would she want the cycle to continue, or would she want Marcus to be strong enough to break it? If we let him stay, he works. Real work, physical labor, no special treatment, and he sees a therapist. And if he slips once, just once, he's gone. Lily nodded seriously. That's fair. Redemption has to be earned. They returned to where Derek and Victoria waited. Marcus crossed his arms, studying his brother with the tactical assessment he'd applied to uncertain allies. Eleanor's Haven has a work program: manual labor, groundskeeping, kitchen duty, maintenance, minimum wage. You'd live in staff quarters. No executive decisions, no management role, no authority over anyone including yourself until you've proven you've changed. Derek swallowed hard. I'll do it, whatever you need. And therapy, weekly sessions with Doc Patterson's referral network. You work on why you became who you were, or you don't stay. Marcus shifted his attention to Victoria. Medical wing needs another nurse. Linda Torres runs it, but could use support. Same conditions: work, therapy, earning trust rather than demanding it. Victoria's eyes filled. Thank you. God, Marcus, thank you. I can't explain how sorry I am about everything. Don't explain. Show me. Show Lily. Show the veterans here who are doing the hard work of healing without making excuses. Marcus stepped back. 6 months probation. After that, we decide if it's permanent. Lily moved forward before Marcus could stop her, positioning herself directly in front of Derek. Her voice carried the solemnity of someone delivering an oath. You hurt my dad really bad. You made him think he wasn't good enough. That's mean and it's wrong, and you should be ashamed. Derek knelt to her eye level, tears visible. I am ashamed, more than you can understand. Good. Shame means you know you did wrong. Now you fix it. Lily glanced back at Marcus. My dad taught me that broken things can be fixed if you work hard enough. But you have to really work, not pretend work, real work. I will. I promise. Promises are easy. Keeping them is hard. Lily stepped back, clearly finished with her judgment. Rex will know if you're lying. Dogs always know. Rex, still watching from the porch, lifted his head as if acknowledging his role as truth detector. Derek managed a weak smile. I believe that. Your dog is smarter than most people I know. The first months of Derek and Victoria's residence at Eleanor's Haven tested every principle Marcus had claimed to believe about redemption and second chances. Derek struggled with physical labor that was beneath what he'd considered appropriate for Hayes' family members, blistering his hands on shovels and rakes, collapsing exhausted after days that barely qualified as normal for the other staff. Victoria relearned nursing skills she'd let atrophy, working under Linda's supervision with the humility of someone who understood her expertise had expired along with her confidence. Lily appointed herself unofficial monitor, reporting to Marcus with brutal honesty about effort levels and attitude changes. She'd inherited Rachel's ability to read people, to spot genuine transformation versus perform compliance. After 2 weeks, she announced, Uncle Derek is really trying. He's slow and he complains to himself, but he doesn't quit. Victoria cried yesterday when Sophia thanked her for the bandage on her knee. I think they're both really sad about who they used to be. Marcus trusted his daughter's assessment more than his own judgment. His perspective was too close, too colored by decades of wounds that didn't heal just because Derek now pushed a lawnmower instead of signing checks. But Lily saw with fresh eyes, and her gradual acceptance of Derek's presence gave Marcus permission to consider that maybe, possibly, people could change if the consequences were severe enough and the desire genuine. Rex's endorsement came slower, but mattered more. The dog ignored Derek completely for the first month, treating him as furniture rather than threat or friend. Then one afternoon, Marcus watched Rex approach Derek during a break, sniff carefully, and accept a tentative pat before walking away. Not friendship, but acknowledgement. The dog's seal of approval for someone who'd crossed from enemy to neutral territory. By month 4, Derek had integrated enough that other veterans occasionally invited him to join therapy groups. The breakthrough came during a session about family damage and inherited trauma, when Derek broke down describing his own father's impossible standards, the constant message that achievement was the only measure of worth, the way love had been withheld until Derek learned to perform rather than exist. Marcus listened from the doorway, uninvited but unable to leave, and recognized patterns he'd never considered. They'd been raised by the same poison, just metabolized differently. Derek becoming the abuser to avoid being victimized. Marcus internalizing worthlessness to avoid confrontation. Understanding didn't equal forgiveness, but it created space where forgiveness might eventually grow. The grand opening ceremony for Eleanor's Haven attracted media attention Marcus hadn't anticipated. National news crews documented the story of a disowned veteran transforming inheritance into community resource. Human interest angles about resilience and redemption that played well with audiences hungry for hope. The Montana governor attended, promising state support for replicating the model elsewhere. Veteran organizations sent representatives, asking detailed questions about funding models and outcome metrics. But what mattered more than officials and cameras was the community that filled every available space. Pine Haven residents who'd supported the transformation, veteran families who'd found healing here, and children who'd learned that trauma didn't define futures if adults were brave enough to address it honestly. Lily had insisted on speaking, despite Marcus's protective resistance to putting his daughter in front of cameras. She'd prepared remarks with typical thoroughness, practicing until every word carried weight without seeming rehearsed. When her turn came, she stepped to the podium in her best dress, still the blue one with white flowers, and adjusted the microphone with composed confidence. "Hi, I'm Lily Hayes. I'm 10 now." Her voice carried clearly, stronger than her size suggested. "A year ago, my dad and I came to Montana because we had nowhere else to go. People said my dad couldn't take care of me because he has PTSD. They wanted to take me away from him." Marcus stood off to the side, hands clenched, watching his daughter speak truths that should have remained private but needed to be heard publicly. "My dad isn't broken. He's healing. There's a difference. When you break your arm, it hurts for a while, but then it gets better if you take care of it right. PTSD is like that, except it's your brain that got hurt instead of your arm. My dad's brain got hurt in the war, but he's taking care of it, and it's getting better." Lily paused, glancing at Marcus for strength, then continued. "People think kids with parents who have PTSD need to be rescued, but we don't need rescuing. We need people to understand that our parents are heroes who are dealing with hero injuries. And we need places like Eleanor's Haven where families can heal together instead of being torn apart." The crowd remained absolutely silent, every eye on the small girl speaking with authority beyond her years. "My great-aunt Eleanor built this place for us because she knew what it felt like when family doesn't believe in you. She knew my dad was strong enough to turn hurt into helping, and she was right. Look around, 45 veterans and their families live here now. 12 kids are my friends. Everyone is getting better because we're doing it together." Lily's voice strengthened, conviction overriding nervousness. "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the right thing even when you are scared. My dad was scared when we drove through that blizzard to get here. I was scared too, but we did it anyway. And now we have a home. A real home where broken families can become whole again." She stepped back from the microphone to thunderous applause that built until it felt like physical force. Marcus met her at the podium edge, wrapping her in a hug while cameras captured the moment for evening news broadcasts. Lily whispered against his chest, "Did I do okay?" "You were perfect, absolutely perfect." The celebration continued through afternoon and evening, but Marcus's favorite moment came after official proceedings ended. Lily organized the children into a presentation for their parents, demonstrating skills they'd learned and growth they'd achieved. Ethan, who'd been terrified to swim because of his father's nightmares about drowning soldiers, demonstrated confident strokes across the new pool Harold's crew had installed. Sophia, who'd been silent for 6 months when she arrived, sang a solo that made her mother weep. Every child presented evidence that trauma could be survived, that families could recover, that Eleanor's haven delivered on its promises. Derek approached during the children's presentation, hesitating before speaking. She's remarkable. Lily, she's everything you and Rachel were at your best. Marcus accepted the observation without responding. Complimenting Lily didn't erase cruelty, but it suggested Derek had developed capacity to recognize value beyond his own interests. I know I don't have the right to ask anything else, but Derek's voice caught. Could I possibly stay after the 6 months? Not because I need the job, but because being here is the first time I've felt like I was contributing something worth more than the salary. That's not my decision alone. Marcus watched Lily orchestrating the children with natural authority. You'd need approval from the community board, and from Lily. She gets veto power over who stays permanently. Derek nodded, accepting terms that would have been unthinkable a year ago. That's fair. She's a better judge of character than most adults. The evening wound down with veterans and families gathering in the Great Hall for the final ceremony, lighting 45 candles representing every resident who'd found refuge at Eleanor's haven. Lily lit the first candle from Eleanor's old studio lamp, then passed the flame to others until the room glowed warm and golden. Tom raised a glass in toast. To Eleanor Blackwood, who knew that the best revenge against those who doubt you is building something beautiful they can't touch. Marcus lifted his glass alongside 50 others. To Eleanor. The words echoed, multiplied, transformed into something approaching prayer, or gratitude, or both. Marcus felt Rachel's absence sharply in moments like these, wished she could see what they'd built, what their daughter had become. But he also felt Eleanor's presence, not supernatural but tangible in every board Harold had cut, every meal Maggie had cooked, every therapy session that had broken someone open so they could finally heal. The estate was Eleanor's final masterpiece, and Marcus was just the caretaker ensuring her vision outlived her mortality. Lily's birthday fell on a crystalline October afternoon, temperature perfect for the outdoor celebration she'd requested. Marcus had tried to keep it small, but the Haven's community had other ideas. 50 people gathered around tables laden with food, children running wild while adults supervised with the relaxed vigilance of those who trusted their village. Maggie had baked a cake decorated with horses and mountains, and Lily's squeal of delight made every painstaking hour worth the effort. Marcus gave her the gift he'd been planning for months, a rescue puppy from the local shelter, 8 weeks old, German Shepherd with Rex's coloring. Lily named her Hope immediately, after Rachel's middle name, and Rex approached the puppy with grandfatherly patience, beginning training that would eventually produce another service dog for the program. Derek and Victoria approached with their own gift, wrapped carefully in paper Lily recognized as being from the craft supplies she donated to the children's art room. We made this together. It's not much, but Lily unwrapped a wooden box beautifully crafted, carved with the same vine pattern that decorated Eleanor's furniture. Inside, a collection of photographs. Eleanor at different ages, Marcus and Rachel at their wedding, Lily as a baby. Someone had assembled a family history that had never existed in one place, creating continuity across generations that had been fractured. How did you get these? Victoria's smile was tentative. I found them in your grandmother's storage unit. She kept everything, even photos of people she pretended not to love. I thought you should have them. Your family history. Lily hugged the box close, then surprised everyone by hugging Derek. Thank you, Uncle Derek. This is the best present. Derek's expression cracked, years of performed confidence giving way to genuine emotion. You're welcome, Lily. You've taught me more about being family than anyone in our bloodline ever did. The party stretched into evening, children and adults playing games that required no expertise, just willingness to participate. Marcus watched from the porch as Lily led a complicated tag variant that involved 3 teams and rules that seemed to change every 5 minutes. Rex supervised while Hope tumbled around his feet, already showing the intelligence that would make her exceptional if training went well. Sarah appeared beside Marcus with 2 glasses of wine. You did it. Eleanor's vision made real. Lily did it. I just followed her lead. Marcus accepted the glass. She's stronger than I ever was. She learned from watching you refuse to break. Sarah's tone carried the fondness of someone who'd witnessed the entire transformation. Eleanor chose well. Both of you. They stood in comfortable silence while celebration continued around them, until Lily noticed Marcus watching and waved enthusiastically. He waved back, heart almost painfully full with gratitude for the series of unlikely events that had brought them to this moment. Eleanor's foresight, Lily's courage, a community's willingness to embrace strangers, and his own stubborn refusal to surrender when surrender seemed rational. 2 years after arriving in Montana, Marcus barely recognized the man he'd been. The estate had expanded to accommodate 80 veteran families, with satellite programs launching in 3 other states. The K-9 training program had placed 30 service dogs with veterans nationwide. Lily, now 12, ran a peer support network for children of combat veterans that had grown to 500 members across 4 time zones. And Marcus had published a memoir about PTSD recovery that was being used in VA hospitals as proof that healing, while not guaranteed, was achievable with proper support. Derek had stayed, approved unanimously by the community board after Lily's endorsement. He ran the maintenance department now, teaching carpentry to veterans who needed skills and purpose. Victoria had become Linda's partner, managing the medical wing, her nursing expertise combined with hard-won humility, making her effective in ways her privileged past had never allowed. Neither would ever fully repair the damage they'd inflicted, but they were building something redemptive from ruins of who they'd been. Marcus proposed to Sarah on the anniversary of his arrival, kneeling in Eleanor's studio with Lily and Rex as witnesses. Sarah accepted with the practical warmth he'd learned to cherish, understanding that marriage for people their age meant combining existing families rather than starting fresh. Lily had immediately begun planning the wedding with an enthusiasm that suggested she'd been waiting for this development. The invitation list had grown to 200 before Marcus gently suggested that maybe, possibly, a smaller ceremony might be more manageable. Lily had looked at him with Rachel's direct gaze and stated flatly, "Daddy, everyone here is family now. You can't exclude family." She was right, as she usually was. The wedding became community celebration, held on the estate grounds, with Tom officiating and half of Pine Haven in attendance. Lily served as maid of honor, delivering a toast that made everyone cry. "Sarah's not replacing my mom. Nobody could. But she's teaching me that love doesn't run out just because you give it to more people. We're not a small family getting bigger. We're a big family that finally found all its pieces." But the most significant transformation was internal. Marcus's PTSD remained. Some wounds never fully closed, but he'd learned to manage symptoms that once controlled him. Therapy helped, medication helped, community helped most. Knowing that when panic attacks came, he was surrounded by people who understood, who'd sit with him without judgment until the storm passed, made the attacks less frequent and less devastating. Rex, now 11 and officially retired from active service, spent his days supervising the K-9 program from a comfortable bed in Marcus's office. Hope, fully trained, had been placed with a Marine who'd lost both legs in Fallujah and needed a partner who understood that mobility came in many forms. The chain of healing continued. Dogs helping veterans, helping dogs, helping more veterans. Endless cycle of redemption that Eleanor had initiated by believing one broken soldier deserved another chance. Lily's 8th grade graduation ceremony was held in Pine Haven's community center, transformed for the occasion with decorations and pride. She'd been chosen as student speaker, an honor that surprised no one who'd watched her leadership emerge. Marcus sat front row with Sarah, Derek, Victoria, Tom, Maggie, Harold, and what felt like the entire Haven community who'd come to celebrate the girl who'd become their collective daughter. The principal's introduction emphasized Lily's academic achievements and community service, but those were statistics that couldn't capture who she'd become. When Lily stepped to the podium, she looked so much like Rachel that Marcus felt the old grief pulse sharp and sweet, loss that would never disappear but had been woven into life's fabric rather than dominating it. When teachers assign write about your personal hero essays, most people choose famous people: soldiers, astronauts, presidents. Lily's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd spoken publicly before and learned to trust her message. "I wrote about my dad." Marcus felt his throat tighten, Sarah's hand finding his under the table. 4 years ago, my mom died. My dad had PTSD from war. We had no money. His family rejected him. Most people would have given up. My dad didn't. Lily detailed their journey with honesty that made several parents shift uncomfortably. The custody threat, the desperate drive to Montana, the discovery of Eleanor's legacy. But she also explained what those experiences had taught her. My dad taught me that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting up every single time. He taught me that broken things can be fixed. Houses, families, hearts, if you're willing to do the work. The audience remained absolutely still, hundreds of people captivated by a 12-year-old's perspective on trauma and recovery. He taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. Lily's eyes found Marcus's across the room. People tried to take me away from my dad because they thought PTSD made him unfit. They were wrong. PTSD made him understand something most people never learn, that the things that break us can become the foundation for building something stronger. Marcus was crying openly now, not caring who witnessed his tears. Sarah pressed closer, offering silent support while Lily continued. 4 years ago, we drove through a blizzard to a house we'd never seen because we had nowhere else to go. Today, that house is home to 80 veteran families. It's a place where broken people help each other heal. My dad built that, with his PTSD, with his courage, with his refusal to believe that being damaged meant being worthless. Lily's voice strengthened, carrying conviction that filled the room. So yes, my dad is my hero, not because he's perfect, because he's real, because he showed up every single day, even on his worst days, because I needed him and he refused to let me down. That's what heroes do. They show up, imperfect, struggling, but present. And that presence, that stubborn, brave, beautiful presence, makes all the difference. The applause started small and built a standing ovation that lasted minutes. Marcus met Lily at the podium edge, holding his daughter while she cried happy tears against his shoulder. Sarah joined them, and somehow Derek and Victoria were there too, and Rex pushed through the crowd with Hope at his side, and the entire Haven community surrounded them in embrace that felt like protection and celebration combined. That evening, after ceremonies concluded and celebrations wound down, Lily led Marcus to Eleanor's studio, which they'd preserved as memorial and art therapy space. She'd been mysterious about needing to show him something, insisting it couldn't wait until morning. In the center of the room, Lily had placed a letter she'd found while organizing Eleanor's archives. It was hidden behind her self-portrait, addressed to me with instructions to open it after my graduation. Marcus read over Lily's shoulder as she unfolded the letter. Eleanor's handwriting still strong, despite having been written during her final weeks. Dearest Lily, if you're reading this, you've graduated 8th grade. Congratulations, brilliant girl. I wish I could have attended, but I'm here in spirit, watching through whatever comes after this life ends. You've probably wondered how I knew so much about you before we met. The answer is simpler than you think. I hired investigators. For 15 years, I had people watching your father, documenting his life, sending me photos and reports. When you were born, I appended surveillance to include you. It sounds sinister written plainly, but it was love expressed through the only means available to someone your family had exiled. I watched you grow. I saw your first steps through photographs. I read reports about your school achievements. I learned you preferred horses to dolls, that you were brave when other children were cautious, that you loved your father with the fierce loyalty he deserved but rarely received. By the time cancer forced me to plan for death, I knew exactly who you'd become. That's how I painted your arrival. That's how I designed the vault to respond to a child's voice. That's how I knew that you and Marcus together would build something beautiful from what I left behind. But Lily, I need you to know something important. The footsteps you heard that first night, the journal mysteriously opened, those weren't ghosts. I installed motion sensor audio recordings throughout Blackwood Estate. Automated systems triggered sounds at specific times, designed to test whether Marcus would run or stand firm. The supernatural was technology, carefully deployed to ensure my heir had courage under pressure. I'm sorry for the deception, but I needed to know Marcus would protect you when fear whispered that retreat was safer. He passed every test. He always would have. You both did. What you've built at Eleanor's Haven exceeds anything I imagined. You've taken my refuge and transformed it into community, my isolation into connection, my careful planning into organic growth that will outlive us all. Thank you for being exactly who you needed to be. Thank you for showing Marcus that love doesn't require perfection, just presence. And thank you for proving that families can be forged from choosing each other rather than accepting blood ties as destiny. Behind my portrait, you'll find one more gift. Use it wisely, with all the love I never got to give you in person. Great-grandmother Eleanor. Lily pulled Eleanor's portrait from the wall, revealing a small safe. The combination, Lily's birth date, opened it easily. Inside, a bound journal with blank pages and a note. For Lily, write your story. You've earned it. And never forget, family isn't found. It's forged in the fires of choosing to love, even when love seems impossible. Marcus read the words over Lily's shoulder, understanding clicking into place. She was testing us from the beginning, making sure we were strong enough for what she'd built. She knew we would be. That's why she left everything to you. Lily turned to face him. Daddy, are you mad that she spied on us? Marcus considered the question seriously. Eleanor's surveillance could be viewed as violation, but it had been motivated by love expressed through the only channels her exile permitted. She'd protected them from distance, prepared refuge they didn't know they needed, orchestrated salvation disguised as inheritance. Anger seemed an inadequate response to that kind of complex devotion. No, baby, I'm grateful. She saw us when no one else did. She believed in us when belief seemed irrational. And she built something that saved us and now saves others. Marcus pulled Lily close. That's love. Complicated, imperfect, but real. They stood together in Eleanor's studio, surrounded by artwork that had captured a woman's entire life, holding the journal that would capture Lily's. Outside, the estate glowed with lights from 80 families who'd found refuge here, and the mountains stood eternal witness to transformation that would ripple forward through generations. Rex barked from the doorway. Time for dinner, time to rejoin the community, time to stop dwelling in past and embrace present. Marcus and Lily followed the old dog downstairs, where Sarah was setting the table and Derek was helping Hope practice commands, and Victoria was laughing at something Tom had said, and the great hall was filling with people who'd become family through choice rather than obligation. This was Eleanor's true legacy, not wealth or property, but the understanding that healing was possible if you were brave enough to accept help, strong enough to offer it, and wise enough to know that sometimes the family you build matters more than the one you're born into. Marcus Hayes had arrived in Montana broken and desperate. He was leaving nothing, going nowhere, because finally, impossibly, he was home. And home, he'd learned, wasn't a place. It was the people who showed up, imperfect and struggling, but present, always present. That presence, that stubborn, brave, beautiful presence, made all the difference.